dinner and conference. My name is Barry Latucci. I'm Executive Director of Jasenovac Research Institute. I welcome you. This year's conference, we have a very interesting, distinguished panel of experts. Stefan Kaganovic, Mina Zirojevic, and Liliana Petrovic, and also Daniel Simic, who was added just last week. Our theme this year is on false narratives and ideology, how ideology is used to miseducate, confuse, and destroy people by pitting them against each other, making them hate each other, and also to demonize certain groups in order so that certain power elites can take advantage of the situation and impose their false narrative, their false ideas on the population. Just a few words about Jasenovac Research Institute. We started Jasenovac Research Institute at the end of the first international conference on Jasenovac in 1997, which was held at Kingsborough Community College. It was a conference that brought together about 20 survivors as well as about 20 historians to talk about the Holocaust in Yugoslavia for the first time. And what we did and what we continue to do in Jasenovac Research Institute is to make sure that the genocide against Serbs and Romas is included in the history of the Holocaust. The Holocaust is a historical event, and from a scientific point of view, it doesn't belong to anybody. It is an objective fact that 6 million Jews were killed, that also hundreds of thousands of Serbs were killed, hundreds of thousands of Romas were killed. We know who died, we know who was targeted as the nations, the peoples that were demonized and who fascism used as their targets for destruction. We know who they are, we know who the perpetrators were, we know it was German imperialism, assisted by Croatian and also Hungarian, Romanian, Bulgarian, and Albanian and Bosnian Muslim fascist groups as collaborators. These are historical facts. So the Holocaust is an event that today is taught and in fact is mandatory throughout the world, throughout much of the world. Maybe not the whole world, but it is a mandatory subject in many curriculums around the world, including in North America and Europe. Therefore, it is absolutely essential that our story be told properly by those who care about it. Because for us, the Holocaust and what happened in Yugoslavia during World War II is not just some page in a history book. It is, in fact, an absolute necessity. It is a biological necessity for us to fight for the truth so that we are able to, we must do it because we know that if we don't do it, these crimes will be perpetrated against us again in the future. So this is for us an absolute must that we must do. We don't have a choice. We must fight for the truth and establish the truth about the Holocaust. However, there are those who wish to perpetrate lies, who wish to exclude certain victim groups, who wish to distort the story. And this is particularly true in the case of Yugoslavia. When the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. was established in 1993, just to give you an example, the Clinton administration invited to the opening of that museum the president of Croatia, Franjo Tuđman. Franjo Tuđman was an open anti-Semite. He was an open anti-Serbian racist. He was a racist. He was a fascist. And yet, he was invited to the opening of the U.S. Holocaust Museum, a man who is an apologist, or was an apologist, for Nazism and Ustashaism. And when they opened that museum, they deliberately excluded from the museum any discussion of Yugoslavia. They had a big map of Europe in the museum when they first opened it. I was there. They had a big map of Europe, and on the wall of this map of Europe, they had all the concentration camps and all of the places where the Nazis and their collaborators had been, except Yugoslavia was not included. It was just a white, blank space. This again is what I call a false narrative. You have deliberately excluded or deleted part of this important story. And now we must ask the question, why are false narratives created? They are created in order to advance the agenda of imperialist powers who use fascism and racism and demonization to obtain whatever objectives they have, whether they're economic or geopolitical. And so this is an example. Now, of course, at that time, there was the war in Yugoslavia was unfolding, and the civil war, although it was portrayed as a war of genocide by Serbs against Croats and Muslims and Albanians, but this was also a part of the false narrative. And the reason they had to lie about the Holocaust in the U.S. Holocaust Museum is because they had to portray the actual victims of the Holocaust, Serbs, Jews, and Romas, as not having been victimized at all, and Serbs as being the actual fascists. So the victims were, the truth was turned upside down. The victims were portrayed as perpetrators. This is a false narrative. And it was a false narrative created to advance the agenda of the United States and Germany especially, but also the United States and Britain, the European Union, which wanted the breakup of Yugoslavia so that they could then come in economically and geopolitically, militarily, to dominate this region for their own interests. Germany also has a long history of involvement in Yugoslavia, which people are not aware of. Germany has long been involved in the Balkans. There were over 500,000 German Yugoslavs up till 1941, or up till the end of World War II. It is true that they were expelled after the war because they were overwhelmingly pro-Nazi. It is true that many of them they lost their property. It is true that they suffered greatly, but they had been pro-fascist, pro-Nazi during the war, and they had collaborated and been perpetrators of the Holocaust in Yugoslavia. Germany never forgave Yugoslavia for this, and German propaganda, if you read German, you know Germany published book after book, article after article about the communist Serbs, communist Yugoslavia, what it did to its German population, how they sued. Well, I feel sorry for the Germans, but I feel sorry for any victim. But they were not also perpetrators. And it did not justify Germany's demonization of the Serbs and Germany's breakup of Yugoslavia, military aid to Croats and Slovenes and Bosnian Muslims. Later, in 1995, we have a new false narrative that was created, and this is an issue that will be discussed today by Stefan Kaganovich and some of the other speakers, the issue of Srebrenica. Srebrenica is a town in Bosnia which had been under the control of the Bosnian Muslim 28th Division of the Bosnian Muslim Army. And in the years between beginning of the war in Bosnia in 1992 to 1995, the Bosnian Muslims had ethnically cleansed the Serbian population surrounding Srebrenica. There were, I forget, Stefan will explain this in greater detail, but I believe there were 100 villages or something like that that were ethnically cleansed of the Serbian population by the Bosnian Muslim Army. The story that was, well, we know what happened. There was, in July 11th, 1995, the Bosnian Muslim military leadership had evacuated. The leading general, Nasser Oric, and his staff had left. And the Bosnian Serb general Mladic came into Srebrenica and took it over. What happened next is, of course, the issue of great controversy, because according to Western sources, there is supposedly a genocide in Srebrenica. Genocide was committed by Serbian forces, according to the false narrative of the United States and Europe. But in fact, it wasn't a genocide. There was no genocide. First of all, it's a distortion of the term genocide to say that even if it is 5,000 soldiers who died or 5,000 men who died, you can't say that that is genocide. It was a battle that took place. But this is an issue that is of great importance because today, throughout the world, Germany, the United States, Britain, and the other leading powers in the world want to impose this false narrative, not only in the curriculum, but by law. So in Canada today, there is a law that is about to be passed where it will criminalize you if you dare to deny that genocide took place at Srebrenica in 1995. This is exactly the kind of use of false narrative that we must fight. We have no choice but to fight this because this is a lie. Well, anyway, I want to move the agenda and I just wanted to give you sort of a taste of, or a kind of preview of what we're going to talk about today, and we'll open the floor for discussion at various points as well. And but before I move any further, I want to also introduce. Some of you may not know Father Jokan Majstorovic. Father Jokan has been a longtime friend of this organization, and we, for many years, held our dinner and conference in St. Savo's Church Hall, and Father Jokan was our host, and we very much appreciate Father Jokan. It's good to see you again. Please come up and say a few words, please.
I used to be a host, now I'm a guest. It's much better. Well, I just wanted to welcome our guests from Europe, from Serbia, Republic of Srpska, from Canada, and elsewhere. And I, as well, would like to commend Bari, who is working very hard to not forget Jasenovac here in this part of the world, which is very important. You know, the monument that was today uncovered is a great success, and it is something that one small group of people working very diligently, very hard, succeeded. I'm so sorry I could not make it to be there, but first opportunity I will be happy to go and pray in front of that monument, which symbolizes thousands of victims, innocent people that were killed by crazy people. Anyway, I just wish to Bari and all his team success in future endeavors, and I welcome all of you here, and my prayers are and blessings that God keeps you well and gives you strength to continue to promote and proclaim what is right and what is good, especially for the people that suffered much, Jewish community, Serbian, Roma, and other ones. God bless you all, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Father John. Don't leave yet. And we made this special sort of award for Father Jokan here that we meant to give it to him last year, but we didn't have a chance. And it says, this is Jasenovac Research Institute Certificate of Deepest Appreciation for Father Jokan Majstorovic in recognition of many years of faithful assistance and support in helping to commemorate the martyrdom of the hundreds of thousands of Serbian, Jewish, and Gypsy victims of World War II at the Croatian death camp Jasenovac. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we really appreciate it. As one of the founders of Jasenovac Research Institute once said, John Rams, who is still alive, he's 99 years old, but unfortunately suffers from Alzheimer's now. He said, you know, we Jews and Serbs, we died together. We suffered the same fate at the hands of the Nazis and the Ustasha. I'm just saying what he said. I'm not inventing anything new here. But he was a great speaker, if you remember John Rams. And he said, we died together in the camps at the hands of the fascists. We suffered the same fate. We experienced the same martyrdom. And we're buried in the same graves. And so we must fight together. And I think what John said, and John was a very progressive-minded socialist, and he was a supporter of Israel, and also a great humanitarian who made this, who really was a mentor to me as well, and to many others who remember him very fondly. I mean, he's still with us, but he's somebody that inspired us very much. Well,